For a lot of us, we've discovered we've had ADHD much later in our life. And with this discovery comes a lot of introspection, a lot of looking within, and a lot of thought processing, looking back at the past, analyzing it, and seeing what we could have done or what would have happened had we known if we had ADHD and stuff of that nature. But for today, I wanted to talk about 5 common occurrences of conditioning that occur amongst individuals who have ADHD. Knowing that you have ADHD is very helpful. It's helpful to understand what type of ADHD you have. But we have to look at our past life. There's a lot of occurrences in our past life where we have had to have learned and picked up different tactics in order to live our life. I mean, we were going against the odds. For a lot of us, we weren't aware we had ADHD growing up and going through school and going through life. And for those of us who are in our adulthood already, there's a lot of stuff and perhaps even negative habits that we've picked up along the way. These negative habits have been picked up in order to be able to compensate for our shortcomings and things we couldn't do. So, for a lot of us now that we've discovered we have ADHD, it's time to reflect. It's time to improve upon those negative aspects of ourselves that before were perhaps much more essential, yet not any longer. But it's not an instant flip of the switch. We can't just let go of a lot of that stuff because a lot of us have got trauma and have been through quite a bit of negative situations in our life. But it's not the end. There's so much we can do to help ourselves, and there's so much we can do to try to improve. But the motivation's hard, especially for those of us who've been through a lot. So, I wanted to share with you guys 5 major points, 5 essential mindsets that I see amongst people with ADHD. And I wanted to give some pointers and perhaps some tips on how to overcome some of these negative mindsets and occurrences that sometimes occur amongst a lot of us with ADHD. So, the first point I want to talk about is ego-dominated individuals. Now, what comes from this is a lot of fragility and a lot of trauma as well. You'd be surprised, a lot of people who are really ego-bound are some of the most fragile people on the planet. Putting their guard up is to protect the fragile within, the fragility within, and to also cover up for unresolved trauma. Having ADHD is tough, especially if you're in an environment where you constantly have to prove yourselves or people are gaslighting you and making you feel harsh, and people just know how to upset you. Or perhaps it's a tense environment in which you grew up. So, having that ego front up that you're going to conquer everything, that no one can take you on, etc., etc. I've seen it so much in people. And we got to watch out for that, because if the ego takes over, you can end up doing some really harsh things that are going to mess you up and mess up those around you. I understand that it's been a tough life and that there's a lot of characteristics that can sometimes be tough to handle. Diving in further to this, there's also an issue of trust amongst people who are ego-dominated. Because when you have ADHD and you feel like someone has mistaken your trust time and time again, this could be for a variety of different reasons. And we have to understand a lot of the time that perhaps we felt like we were going out of our way for somebody, and they couldn't do that back to us. They couldn't go out of their way for us. So we put up that front that we can't trust anybody, because we're just afraid of being hurt again. We're afraid of someone taking advantage of us, perhaps. Whether it be in a relationship or in a friendship, a lot of us with ADHD have been taken advantage of from perhaps our friends, perhaps our significant other, however it may be. And this is really damaging. especially if it happens time and time again. So the mind puts up that guard of the ego. Just don't trust anybody. You're going to be able to take anything on without the help of nobody. Those mindsets come in and they infiltrate the mind as a sense of protection. We can also dive into anxiety. We can also dive into anxiety and paranoia about others and things out to get you. People with ADHD who have lived in environments where there is a lot of threat and a lot of tension and tense individuals, and that drives anxiety really high. I've worked with a lot of people with ADHD, and there's a big sense of anxiousness sometimes. And some people are better at hiding it than others, but that sense of paranoia, of anxiety, of someone's going to be out to get me, to screw me over, everything is just a win-lose situation. This all entails from a lack of neurochemistry of certain neurotransmitters. But we didn't know about this. We didn't know about the circumstances and situations and how they were so much negatively affecting us perhaps in the past. I can tell you, I myself have been around environments when I was young. I was around a lot of tense, very tense environments where the individuals I would be around were very ego-bound and status-driven, and I absolutely hated it. Because I'm not an ego-bound or status-driven individual. I like giving 100% into the projects and things that I work on, but there's a big difference between someone who wants to give it their all in what they're doing and other people who just want to seek the glory and admiration of other people by forcing it. And what ends up happening is there's a lot of us who have not had perhaps the encouragement, or perhaps felt like we weren't given props, we weren't given a congratulations, you did a good job. So what ends up happening to some of us is we go out there seeking that from other people because we didn't get that. And there's trauma, unresolved trauma, that brings forth anxiety that if we don't always prove ourselves, then perhaps people are going to know who we really are within, is what the mind can tell us sometimes. And that anxiousness just gets higher and higher because we feel like if we don't do certain things that people aren't going to like us, people aren't going to accept us, and people are going to think really negative about us. So there's anxiety of the self, and then there's anxiety and lack of trust in general, and that can increase the anxiety because you don't know what to trust or who to trust. And everything is just a this or that sort of mentality. And with this comes a narrow-minded view of the world. That there simply exist those who are there to help us and those who are out to do us harm. There is such more variety to human experience and to connections with people that a lot of the time, when the ego takes over an individual, we just look at upon, is this person going to do me good or are they not going to do me good? And then we essentially sacrifice a lot of experiences with people and with places that we otherwise would have because we're trapped within our own fragility within. We're trapped within our own anxiety and concerns that people are going to be out to get us and hurt us, and that life is simply an avoidance of being hurt. And that's a really tough way to look at life. And I understand that with having undiagnosed ADHD, it can be a really gloom view, a really unvariety-filled life. And I've worked with so many people who've had an issue with this. And as I've said before, that tough ego, that I don't trust anybody. I'd rather be able to do stuff on my own so I don't have to risk being screwed over. Anxiousness about people finding out about some of your shortcomings and things of that nature. This can also make the individual very irritable, very angry and intense to make sure that none of these things ever happen. And if any of these things do occur, the individual might get really upset. So we got to work sometimes on putting the guard down. That not everyone is out to get us, and we have to be able to trust upon situations and certain people more. We need to be wise about that. It's not a simple, oh, I can always trust this person or I can never trust that person. It depends on the situation, depends on the time, depends on the person. So many factors come into trust. It's not as simple just yes or no. But with having ADHD, it almost makes it a must a lot of the time, because we're protecting ourselves. We just got to make sure to also protect our sense of well-being and not have our guard and our ego be the dominating force that shoves so many people away that perhaps are trying to do us good and help us out. And to shove and just put away so many circumstances and so many opportunities. I can tell you, I've worked with ego-dominated individuals who, because of their narrow view of life, they eliminate so many lovely opportunities that could do them a lot of good, but they just choose not to do it because of a lack of trust or a feeling of insecurity on the inside, like they might fail. And that failure is just such a negative driving force that idea of them failing just overrides everything else. So what we got to do is we got to try to improve ourselves. We got to take care of the ADHD. We got to find out which of these issues is the most dominant within us, and then we got to start working through little by little. Because being dominated by the ego is a very dangerous thing. Throughout the history of mankind, so many wars have been started because of one person's ego. So many negative occurrences occurred because of the ego, because it's a fragile mindset, a protection of the self. Anxiety and tensions are high. You go to an environment where there's a lot of ego-dominated individuals, it is a really tense environment. And that's a really unhealthy environment to be in. So if you've been around a lot of people like that, or if you yourself have trouble with that, perhaps it's time to seek different avenues and perhaps associate yourself with perhaps different people, become introspective, learn how to control these things, or perhaps even help those who are like you or who were once like you after you work on yourself. It's a sense of motivation, a sense of freeing yourself from the shackles of an ego-dominated mindset. The ego is a guard for a lot of insecurity within. That once we work on the issues that we have within, we're not going to have the need to be ego-dominated anymore, have our guard up and just not trust things and have everything just be this or that. It gives strength to someone once they can conquer their own ego and put it on check. I truly believe with effort and placing the things that we've spoken about, that you can dominate your own ego and get out of that mindset of needing to conquer everything. It's good to be motivated. It's great to be motivated to improve in life and conquer your goals, but we got to be realistic about those goals and not look at everything as any little mistake that happens, it was someone out to get me and screw over what I'm doing. Life isn't like that. That's a very anxiety, paranoia-driven way of looking at life. We need to be wise about who and what we work with. We also need to be wise about how we manage time. Most of all, we need to be wise and not let our ego dominate ourselves. Second point, people pleasers. There's some people with ADHD who have such a need to make others happy, and sometimes to an extent to cover up their own shortcomings. There seems to be a frequent disregard of the self for the sake of others. And that's a very humble, beautiful thing to want to help others, but we need to regard the self too and our needs, especially if we have ADHD, because resentment is going to start to build little by little. I help so many people out, why don't they help me back out? And if you've told yourself that internally in your mind, and that's kept building, and you feel like you have nobody else to talk to about that, then perhaps it's time for you to start speaking up for yourself. Because of our ADHD, some of us have really low self-esteem, and we feel like we're not enough, we're not worth it. Or if I were to speak up for myself, who's going to listen? Some people might say to themselves. But you're somebody of worth. You have all the right to speak up for yourself and talk about your shortcomings. If it's a little difficult to talk about the issues you have because of ADHD, you don't have to admit the most intense things. First, start little by little and talk to somebody, a close friend or a family member, who you know you can talk to and who you know will be that ear and that shoulder to lean on and talk to, perhaps. So, because of not being able to do quite a variety of things, or because of feeling like we can't do a lot of things correctly, we sometimes feel the need to have to please other people in order to compensate for that. And then we feel like if we let somebody down in just this minuscule amount of way, it might feel devastating. It might feel like we're not worthy of their friendship anymore, or we're not worthy of the work there. We might start questioning ourselves. What is our worth? Are we worth something? These are intense thoughts, and this comes from being quite fragile within because of having perhaps an undiagnosed condition and living your life like that. If that truly is the case for you who are listening, you need to understand that you had a condition you weren't aware of. You weren't taking care of it. You were doing the best you could with positive intentions, but at the same time overcompensating for something you weren't aware about. So now that you are aware of the ADHD, it's time to start building boundaries when you need to start speaking up for yourself. And it doesn't have to be anything intense. It doesn't have to be anything angry or, with immense emotions. A simple, I'm sorry, but I can't do that today. I'm not feeling all that good, but I'll be able to do it tomorrow or whenever else you can do it. If someone's asking you for a favor or whatever, it's okay to set boundaries, and it's okay that you're not always going to be able to come through for people, and that sometimes you might fail, and sometimes what you work on might not be the best thing. It might need to be worked on some more. And also, most of all, to understand that if you can't complete what's expected of you sometimes, you're only human, and that's perfectly fine. And you're working ideally on your ADHD as well. If you're going out of your way, and if you constantly keep going out of your way, and you feel that's not being given back to you, you're going to have some resentment build within. So rather than holding everything within, every once in a while talk about certain things that might be a little bothersome to you. Perhaps on how you can improve upon something. It doesn't take much, but it feels quite hard, especially if you've never done it. So I urge you to take the opportunity, if you're somebody who has issues with this, to build a boundary for yourself. The next time somebody asks you to go out of your way for something when you know you can't, be honest about it. And with your reply, just give the person the reassurance that you're going to be able to take care of it when it's needed. And if you can't do it, well, mention that you can't do it. That's setting up a boundary for yourself. Just like people set boundaries with you as well when they tell you you can't do something. When they tell you that they can't do something, you're understanding. Other people will be understanding of you as well. So it's okay to set a boundary. Because if you're constantly pleasing people and not standing up for yourself and not getting the essential things of yourself done, there's going to be quite a bit of difficulty doing the things that one needs to accomplish. Because the majority of your life is going to be spent perhaps accomplishing things for other people rather than yourself, and trying to hide away from the fact that you have a condition that you don't want others to know about. So if other people you've worked with are not aware that you have ADHD, if you feel comfortable enough at some point, talk about your ADHD. You'd be surprised how many people are considerate. We're living in a much more considerate time where people are much more understanding of certain things than it was perhaps 15, 20 years ago. So stand up for yourself. It's nice to be helpful to other people. It's also nice to be helpful to yourself. Understand that those you've helped out, for the most part, will also help you out as well. Things will be alright. The next time you find yourself in a situation like that, and you feel that you're in the crossroads of not knowing whether you should do or do something for someone, I want you to measure the situation and really see whether you're going out of your way or not, and should you be going out of your way, or can this wait? Can you do it perhaps at a different day and a different time? Just like your understanding of other people, a lot of people are just going to be just as understanding to you. You'd be surprised. This is an issue I had to an extent. And once I got to know the issue and started taking care of it and started setting boundaries where I needed it, it's really surprising. For me it was, to see how many people are much more understanding than I previously anticipated. So, I urge you to start setting boundaries if you have an issue with this. And you'd be surprised how well the results might be. Number 3, negative outlookers. Because of having undiagnosed ADHD, a lot of people grow up having really intense experiences, and sometimes a lot of those experiences are quite negative. And this can really, really condition and get someone used to living a lifestyle where they expect negative things to frequently happen. A lot of people with ADHD have lived a life where they have frequently been around failure, where they have tried stuff and it hasn't worked out right. Perhaps they're used to hearing negative things from instructors all the years of going through school, getting fired from frequent jobs, feeling like other people can't give them the support and encouragement that they need. Having ADHD brings forth a lot of unique difficulties that unless you have ADHD and understand it, you're not going to be able to relate to it. So for a lot of us, we've grown up with a lot of failures and a lot of rejection from a lot of people. And sometimes that comes from friends and family members, and that can really make the situation a lot worse. Frequent negative experiences and life failures will impact something known as rejection-sensitive dysphoria. Research has shown that ADHD is really impacted by rejection-sensitive dysphoria. I'm going to give a quick recap into it, but if you want to check out more of rejection-sensitive dysphoria, I have a whole other video that talks about it more in depth. I'll leave a link. But for now, I want to quickly cover the subject matter. Rejection-sensitive dysphoria is a really intense negative feeling that people with ADHD get when they feel that they have been rejected from something or someone, or when they feel they have let somebody down. It's a feeling that feels really bad, and it has to do with our central nervous system being heightened. So we feel the experiences really intensely, and it feels absolutely devastating. We feel like if we went out of our way for somebody and they didn't do it back to us, it's just we don't want to see that person again, either ever or for a long time. Or we feel like if we let somebody down, it feels like the end of the world for a lot of people. And this has to do with neurochemistry and with our central nervous system. So I have a video on it you might want to check out. But that feeling, that rejection sensitive dysphoria, a lot of people with ADHD will do almost anything to avoid feeling like that. So a lot of experiences are not had. So someone who has a very negative outlook on life, more times than not, is going to have a past that deals with a lot of rejection sensitive dysphoria. With this also comes not enough encouragement within mental and physical surroundings. People have a frequently negative outlook on life, perhaps have been around a lot of other people, perhaps family and friends who maybe they themselves had ADHD and were used to failing and being fired and rejected in a bunch of different ways in their own life. And what that does is that if you grow up in a family or an environment like that, those mindsets are going to be placed upon you. And if you see and if you're conditioned by people like that, that's going to become the norm for you. And you might have a really negative outlook on life. And that's really unhealthy. And that's also really unrealistic. We have to understand that when something is attempted without success, over and over again, motivation goes down. We then stop believing in ourselves. And if we want to keep succeeding, unfortunately, some people can get an ego complex, and the ego can take over in order to fool the mind into thinking that you can conquer anything. And that's a point I spoke about. That's an earlier point I spoke about. But I digress. Going back to this. When you've experienced a lot of failure and you've tried a lot of things and over again, in your past, you probably told yourself, okay, I'm going to keep trying again. But then if you keep failing at something over and over again, the motivation just goes away and you stop believing in yourself. But let me tell you something. In your past, if you didn't have your ADHD taken care of and you tried doing these things and you gave it everything you had and you still couldn't do it, that's because you didn't have your condition on check. You didn't have your ADHD taken care of. It's not because you're a failure. It's because you did not have your condition taken care of. You were going up against the odds. You had all these negative things around you and you didn't have the proper encouragement that you needed and you didn't have your ADHD taken care of. When you have those things taken care of, you have your ADHD taken care of, when you can internally work upon your rejection-sensitive dysphoria, let me tell you something, your outlook on life is going to change because you're going to see the possibilities that are available out there in life once we turn our life around, once we get informed about ADHD, and we get informed about our rejection-sensitive dysphoria. And once we start taking treatment for the ADHD and the rejection-sensitive dysphoria, there is hope. With constant negative experiences, there's a difficulty believing in oneself, in believing that things can change. When you don't have your ADHD taken care of and when you don't understand rejection-sensitive dysphoria and when you don't understand your own cognitive functions and personality type, it can be really tough to succeed because there's so much strategies out there, so many strategies out there that we don't know what works for us. So what I urge you to do is dive into cognitive functions and your personality type. Discover what that is and how ADHD affects that. I have a whole video on all 16 cognitive functions and personality types and how ADHD affects all of them. Personality types, the 16 personality types, they're not a one-size-fits-all. There may be 16 foundational personality types, but out of those 16 personality types are billions of different incarnations. People with the same personality type can be radically different people. It's the cognitive functions and how we're conditioned with nature and nurture that truly impacts that. Once I discovered that about myself, once I discovered about my ADHD, once I discovered about my rejection-sensitive dysphoria, I was able to turn a negative view of life completely around, and I truly believe you can do the same thing. believing in yourself is extremely important. Believing in potential for positive change is also extremely important. And I know it's really hard to have that if you've had a lot of failure and a lot of negative experiences in your life. But let me tell you something. I was an extremely negative individual in my younger years in a lot of respects. I knew I can change. I didn't know how. Teachers would tell me, you're a smart student. It's just that you don't apply yourself. You're lazy. And I'd be like, I'm doing my best. What do I need to do? Why is my best not enough? Is what I asked myself. And that's probably what a lot of people with ADHD have also asked themselves. So I urge you, do what I did. Do what others have done. Take care of your ADHD if you haven't done so already. Go and get yourself evaluated and start seeking treatment for it. And then perhaps start taking supplements as well so you can fully, in a well-rounded manner, take care of your condition completely. Find out what your cognitive functions are. Find out how rejection-sensitive dysphoria impacts you. I have videos on all of that you might want to look into. I made that stuff so more people can become informed about these things that give them so much trouble, so they can take that negative outlook on life and completely turn that around. Life becomes such a wonderful thing once you realize all the options and availabilities that you have. But it takes a step-by-step process. This is not something that changes overnight. There's a lot of relearning we have to do because of a lot of bad habits we've picked up. But most importantly, you need to understand that change is possible, and you can definitely change your outlook on life. When you change and make that change in your life of taking care of your ADHD, what ends up happening is you start having more positive experiences. With much more positive experiences, you think that negative outlook is going to remain and continue? Absolutely not. What ends up happening is that you start shifting your focus, saying, hey, there's a possibility here that I can do stuff different than I've always done them. I have the help now for my condition, and I can try this and succeed, and understand that I'm not always going to succeed, and that's okay. Because at that point, you're going to be aware of your rejection-sensitive dysphoria and hopefully have it on check. The possibilities are there. It's up to you to want to change. Anybody can want you to change as much as they want, but it takes the individual. You have to be the change that you want to be, and you have to want it more than anybody else for it to be a reality. I believe in you. Go and make some change happen. Point 4, frequent good time seekers. When it comes to the mind being stimulated, some people with ADHD have a priority on having fun and stimulating the mind. And this comes from the ADHD not being taken care of. And because of this priority is placed on stimulating the mind and not fixing the issue, when an issue arises and makes somebody feel bad with ADHD, perhaps, they're going to want to do whatever it is to make that bad feeling go away. And some people have a tendency to want to run away from their problems and just go and have a fun time, or just try to go out and just party it up and try to basically ease the pain or just not think about it. Out of sight, out of mind. The issue or circumstance is avoided in order to not feel bad. This comes from individuals perhaps that were raised in a manner, perhaps by family members who had ADHD as well, who, when it was time to work on something or a problem, instead of talking about it and resolving it, there would perhaps be a lot of intensity. And then one parent would probably be like, okay, you know what, instead of it getting tense, let's just go to this place. Let's order this or go there. And then fun basically became the bandage on the metaphorical wound that needed to be healed. But rather than taking care of the problem, something more positive like having a fun time was brought forth. And what I mean by more positive is more stimulating to the mind. So if you come from an environment like that when a problem comes, you avoid it frequently because you're an avoidant type of person when it comes to matters that are boring to you or matters that are not fun, You have the skill set to be able to work on what needs to be worked on. It's just, if you have not ever done that, that skill set can be a little hampered. It's there because we've learned from being conditioned by different sorts of mediums growing up that we know how to solve certain things. But if we don't put into habit to resolve and solve and work on the things that we need to work on that are not fun, then we're just going to keep seeking to have a good time anytime something bad happens or anytime something needs to be taken care of. And what happens with families like this is this can really screw up the finances of a family. This can really screw up a lot of beautiful moments that could be had of self-growth or growth as a family or growth as an individual for the sake of just avoiding that negative feeling. It's okay to sometimes dwell and think about certain things, what we can do. It's when they start eating at us and when it starts getting really negative and we feel like there's no escape or there's no solution. That's a scary feeling, and that can also arise from ADHD and a lack of certain neurotransmitters that makes us feel threatened. It makes us feel anxious, makes us feel nervous. And unfortunately, after frequent failures, because of a lot of us having ADHD and having difficulty completing stuff, we might feel like, what's the point? We're not going to be able to solve the problem. Growing up, we perhaps never were taught how to solve certain issues. We were just taught to go and have a fun time or to avoid the issue at hand completely. That's when you need to set a boundary. There's a time and place to have fun, and there's a time and place to improve upon the self and to become informed about your ADHD. In cognitive functions and amongst personality types, there's certain personality types that have an issue with this more than others. So I would urge you to look into cognitive functions, into your personality type, and see how ADHD affects that. Because once you're aware of your weaknesses and your strengths, then you can better organize and manage your life to better be able to help you and your loved ones. One of our biggest responsibilities should be ourselves and our loved ones and those we work with in terms of when a big problem arises or something that needs to be solved. If it can't be solved right away, that's fine. Certain things take time to be solved. To avoid it completely and sweep it under the rug is not going to solve it. It's just going to put it out of sight, out of mind. But life is going to throw you a lot of circumstances and challenges that have to do with that. So we have to be wise in prioritizing that. And if we feel really harsh about being in certain situations and not knowing how to go about it, we need to ask ourselves, is this a problem or situation that's going to take a long time to handle? Because if it is, we need to handle the issue step by step. And we need to take care of what is possible to be taken care of and not beat ourselves up for not being able to do something that's impossible. We need to be realistic about the challenges that we take, and we need to be realistic about our expectations. And we also need to be realistic about our past and perhaps how we had undiagnosed ADHD and we weren't able to accomplish certain things. But now that we're aware of ADHD and the shortcomings and difficulties it brings, that we're going to be more than capable of handling a lot of these problems. But we just need to learn how to set the boundary. Because with this comes a difficulty prioritizing time and structure. If you have difficulty prioritizing time and structure, this could mean that your perceiver function is just unbalanced. And this goes back to cognitive functions and your personality type, that we need to become aware of how to understand time. We need to start noticing or taking notes as to how long certain things take us to do. There's a time to have fun, and there's a time also to structure and to work on what's needed. Balance is key. And I really do feel like if the ADHD is taken care of, if the reward system is being taken care of through ADHD medication, perhaps supplements, a good diet plan, that frequent need to always have a good time is going to diminish, because you're already going to feel good taking care of yourself and those around you. And then you're better going to be able to work on what needs to be worked on, and then go and have your fun and have a good time after you've worked on what needs to be worked on. And you can manage this and mix it up in whatever way works for you. We're all unique in our different ways, and some people have more of an urge to go out more than others. So there definitely needs to be a balancing point within that, because some of us need that more than others, going out. So we need to be understanding of that. We need to be understanding of our partner and of our friends who might be different from us. But understand, most importantly, that there needs to be a boundary and a balance about having the need to avoid working on what needs to be worked on, because it's important. It's your life. Final point. Point number 5. Individuals who were frequently hurt / misunderstood growing up. Similar to point 1, for those of us who have been really hurt by other people because of not understanding ADHD and not knowing we had ADHD, we have issues with trust, because we feel like other people are just going to make us feel bad. That if we go to a certain place or if we're in a certain situation, that the same things that have made us feel bad in the past are going to make us feel bad again. That people are going to continuously let us down. It's tough growing up with ADHD and not being aware of the struggles that it brings. Because what happens is that other people, majority of people who don't have ADHD, they don't have a lot of the same struggles that we do. The agents of socialization, the media, parents, schools, they don't teach you how to be considerate to those of us with ADHD, because the majority of people don't have it. So thankfully now there's much more information out there about ADHD, and certain schools can be quite accommodating, but it wasn't always like that for a lot of us. So there's an issue of trust, and there's an issue that, what's the point? No one's going to come and help me out or give me encouragement when I need it. So with that comes a sense of, I have to look out for myself, because no one is going to be able to look out after me like me, because no one understands the things I go through. And the truth is that there are many people who understand what you're going through. They have ADHD as well. A lot of us have lived similar but really different lives at the same time. ADHD has its unique struggles for sure that a lot of us can relate to. So we need to be understanding of that, and we need to be understanding and sometimes forgiving too, even though it can be very hard, that those people that didn't come to help us out when we were younger, or we didn't get encouragement, or we felt like we couldn't relate to anybody, those people weren't doing those things to try to hurt us. They just weren't aware of it. Perhaps we also weren't aware of it. When you discover you have ADHD, you go through a lot of information, or a lot of us do at least, where we find out what is it that we struggle with, what is it that we have difficulty with, and it's a long list of stuff. A lot of people around us growing up probably weren't aware of that. So we need to be understanding, perhaps a bit forgiving, especially if we built up a lot of resentment where other people weren't there for us when we needed it. Because most of the time, those people weren't aware that we needed it. Those people weren't aware that we needed their guidance, perhaps, their encouragement in certain areas. And I guarantee you, for the most part, that a lot of those people, had they known you had ADHD, they would have encouraged you and helped you out in a much different manner. That would have been really helpful. But life is different. We're not always aware of the struggles that we have, and people are not always aware of the struggles that we have, and vice versa. So we need to learn to be understanding of certain people. Because everyone's living life in their own trajectory. Some of us aren't doing too good sometimes, some of us are doing great other times. Life is a constant up and down. But it's how we view life and the tools by which we take to take action that really make a difference. So, with that being said, we have to learn how to better analyze people and situations. We have to learn how to be realistic about better handling people and situations and not having that mindset that, oh, what's the point? People aren't going to come to help us out. The situation is going to be negative. With having undiagnosed ADHD, there's a lot of failure and a lot of rejection that can occur. And we might feel very disencouraged to try to connect with a lot of people because we feel like they're not going to be able to relate and I'm going to feel odd or just misunderstood, and there goes that. So we need to become comfortable with talking about ADHD and talking about how it affects us in a positive and in a negative way. Because ADHD can be quite helpful in a variety of ways. It gives us certain skill sets and a fast mind, fast body, and it gives us the ability to hyper focus. And some of the most creative people on the planet have ADHD. And if you can take care of the ADHD and understand how it works and understand how your cognitive functions work, you can really utilize the tool of ADHD to help you succeed in life. You just need to find a job, a niche, a field, an environment where you can thrive. That's going to put your ADHD and your personality type functions, is going to utilize the strengths of all that, so you can find a job or scenario where you can really thrive and improve. But that takes a lot of introspection. That takes a lot of time for you to heal sometimes from what you've been through in the past, to be trusting enough to put yourself out there. I'll be the first to tell you, when I was younger, I was not the person who would have made a channel to put up videos to talk about this stuff. I was very to myself. I didn't think anyone wanted to hear a lot of these things, and I didn't understand why. Once I found out I had ADHD, I started researching it for a few years and started going into deep dives of articles and whatnot, going on forums, just anything I can find on ADHD, especially inattentive ADHD. So I would go looking for anything inattentive ADHD and just really go into a deep dive. And then same thing with hyperactive and combined type. I started seeing what's the issues with neurochemistry, gene mutations, and et cetera, et cetera. Once I found all that stuff out, I started taking care of all the neurotransmitters, the major neurotransmitters that give us difficulty with ADHD. And I made a supplement plan for myself. I got myself evaluated, started taking medication, very low dose medication, and started taking my health, my fitness really seriously, and was able to turn my life around. And then I was able to come to terms with the fact that most people when I was younger, they didn't know what I had. I didn't know what I had. Inattentive ADHD is such a rare form of ADHD. And interestingly enough, more females have inattentive ADHD than males do. And if you have a personality type that's really rare, like I do, my personality type is less than 5% of the population here in the US. So, yeah, I have lived a pretty unique life and have been able to relate to very few people growing up. And a lot of people gave me a very hard time growing up, and I had to learn how to stand up for myself, including to adults and teachers, because I was treated quite bad when I was a kid in elementary school. We need to be understanding and sort of try to reverse that mindset that woe is me, people didn't try helping me out. Was it because I wasn't worth it? Was it because they were mean? No, it's just a lack of knowledge of knowing the circumstance, and you weren't taking care of yourself. You weren't taking care of the issue at hand, the core issue, which is the ADHD itself. So we need to take care of the ADHD, and we need to understand that it's okay for you to let others know some of your difficulties. For a long time, a lot of us probably feel like people aren't going to care if I talk to them about these things. if they mean a lot to you and if they truly are your friend or whoever you're close to and you tell them these things, they're going to care. And if you feel like they don't care, really be sincere about it and talk to them seriously about how it affects you, how it's affected you. Talk to them about what you learned about, what you want to do, and perhaps what type of help you want from them in terms of your encouragement. A lot of the time we expect people to be considerate of us and to help us out with certain things when the other people probably even aren't aware that we need the help or encouragement. And that comes from rejection sensitive dysphoria and from not wanting to let people down, or for feeling like, what's the point? They're just going to let me down anyway. And I don't want to feel bad, so I just might as well not say it, is the mindset a lot of people with ADHD have. So we got to understand that it's not always like that. And if we become aware and informed about rejection sensitive dysphoria, ADHD, and how it affects our personality type, that we're going to be able to be much more flexible. We're not going to feel as bad if someone doesn't come through for us. We're going to understand the situation and be like, oh, it's just a matter of circumstance. Perhaps the person was busy today. Perhaps the person didn't feel like doing this. They had something else. There's a hierarchy of importance in people's lives. And we have a lot of things that we're responsible for and a schedule sometimes that we have to stick to. So we got to be understanding of other people sometimes. But most importantly, we got to be understanding of ourselves and of the reality that ADHD is no joke and it's something to be taken care of. And we need to work on not being resentful for those people who weren't there for us when we were growing up that we perhaps needed in regards to ADHD because they weren't perhaps aware of it. And there's some parents now who have a hard time accepting that their son or daughter has ADHD. Because it can be really damaging to a parent to feel like, why couldn't I find out what was wrong with my own son or daughter? And why couldn't I help them out? So there's some resentment in that part as well. They can feel harsh for not being able to come through. But ADHD is not always the easiest thing to catch in people. Especially years back, it was the symptoms and ADHD in general was not really spoken about all that much. So we got to help ourselves out, and we got to be understanding that not everyone is going to know about ADHD. So we got to be the ones who put the information out there and help those of us around us who perhaps don't have a voice, who have ADHD and need the help. I've spoken and helped out various people who have ADHD. That's my target demographic to work with, people who have ADHD. Because it's such a misunderstood condition for a lot of people, and it's not a simple thing where you have a couple of symptoms of difficulty. No, ADHD affects your entire life. And if it's left untreated, it can really devastate an individual's life. So we need to work on healing from within and being forgiving of those of us who couldn't be there when we needed them to be there, or perhaps didn't understand that we needed them perhaps more than we did. So don't be afraid to talk about your ADHD to those who are close to you. For the most part, people are going to want to be supportive and helpful to you. If they truly love and care for you, they're going to have no problem trying to help you out on your journey, just like you probably would to help them out on their journey as well. Well, those were the 5 points. I really hope you can find some insight and some guidance in these principles that we spoke about, and that if you, your loved one, or anyone close to you has issues with these things, that you can perhaps work on it. You can perhaps help others work on it. If you don't have ADHD and you know people who struggle with these things, that you can talk to them about it. Maybe perhaps even show them this video and discuss the points that need to be worked on, and then help them or help yourself improve and become the best you that you can be, because it's totally possible, but it takes time, and most importantly, it takes effort. This is your ADHD comrade, Wilhelm. Over and out.